Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, I'm continuing my trek through the episodes of the 90s classic show Batman the Animated Series. This is episode 5, Pretty Poison. And once again, for those of you joining us, if you are wondering why I'm reviewing them in a weirdish order, it seems I'm going off a production order rather than air order. And for a show like this, I think production order is a little bit more telling when it comes to noticing the shift from the very, very cartoony-ish stuff to a little bit more balanced stuff. Pretty Poison, very comic booky, but it's not really child stuff. It's just child-friendly, I guess you could say. And this is an episode I do remember watching because me and my brother had a VHS release of it. I believe it's one someplace. I just don't have it handy where I can grab and show off. And it's one of the plots I do remember. And of course, going into the rewatch a decade ago that I talked about at the beginning of this series and even this series, I'm like, oh yeah, that's one of the episodes I remember. As it is, the teleplay is by Tom Ruger, and we got Diane Pershing voicing Pamela Isley, aka Poison Ivy. She was a voice actress with a very prolific career. Like, here's some of the stuff she's been in, going back to the 80s. The New Adventures of Flash Gordon, The Smurfs, Inspector Gadget, She-Ra Princesses of Power, and of course after this, Goof Troop, Darkwing Duck, Rugrats. She was even in Fallout New Vegas, and according to this, that seems to be her most recent credit, but I don't see anything on here about her being retired from voice acting. She just does other stuff like singing and all that. As Pamela, she is an excellent casting choice. In this episode, you get the more seductive aspect of her, and then near the end, you get a little bit more of the maniacal, environmentalist side of her. Now, Ruger's script, you can tell with Pamela that he is showing that although she is an environmentalist and wants what's best for nature, she is very flawed with her approach. And it really draws from the comics with how it tackles some of it. Now, the opening scene takes place 5 years before the present day. We see ground is being broken on a site for a new penitentiary. And this is when Harvey Dent was just elected as district attorney. He and Bruce Wayne, his good friend and the benefactor for this, are there to start the groundbreaking on the new penitentiary to help make it a better and safer Gotham. Now, while they're doing this, Pamela is at a different part of the site digging up a rose. Now, obviously, we can see why she's doing this, because she doesn't want the rose to be destroyed while they're digging up the site. And it is a nice little bit of foreshadowing to what's going to happen later. Now, to go hand in hand with Harvey's speech during the breaking, I just love how when it cuts to present day, it's like 5 years later, a better and safer Gotham, and it's all dark and dreary. It's like, yeah, that plan went out the window. We're seeing a prison break, and while the name of the prisoner is not given, apparently his design is loosely based off a character from the comics called Professor Achilles Milo. He escapes by helicopter. And of course, Gordon comes out at the GCPD telling them, we got a prison break coming this way in helicopter. And everybody gets out of there. And this is where we see Bullock is used a little bit for comic relief here, where there's two different scenes like this, where the first time, both times, he looks like he's going to leave and he goes back and grabs a donut and then follows. And it's funny both times, so it's nice to see Bullock use a little bit for comic relief. Now, like always, Batman is the one that intercepts, and he's the one that interrupts this prison break. Now, while he's doing so, Harvey is at a place called the Rose Cafe with Pamela. They're on a date. They've been dating for about a week. And this is going to be him introducing Pamela to his friend Bruce. Now, they're eating because Bruce is late. And given that Harvey and Bruce have been friends for years, this is something that he's like, yeah. Now, Bruce is always late. It's just how he is, business and all that. Of course, we all know it's Batman business. And I love the back and forth cutting between this, where he's like, yeah, that's how he gets his kicks. Cut to him kicking someone. I mean, it's one of those ones that like, but I thought it was kind of clever, especially for a more family-oriented Batman show. I mean, it's also some of the humor we have in the Star Wars prequels. I mean, so, this is such a drag. I am quite beside myself. Bruce eventually does show up, after going home, changing, and having Alfred give him the lowdown on the restaurant. They seem to all hit it off. And after Pamela leaves, kissing Harvey goodbye, we find out, he's going to propose. And of course, Bruce is initially like, Harvey, you just barely met her. And then Harvey seems a bit off. Like, is it hot in here? And he passes out into his food. He ends up going to the hospital, and we find out he was poisoned. Now, this is, of course, where we get that second little police thing. Harvey Dent's been poisoned. We gotta go. Donut. Now, Bruce is in full Bruce mode, telling Commissioner Gordon what exactly happened. Asking the doctors it looked like it was poison and all that. And he covertly steals the sample and takes it back to the Batcave where they analyze it. And while the police are giving the restaurant staff the third degree, mainly Bullock. What did you put in that? Strychnine? No, sir, not strychnine. That type of thing. Batman is, of course, analyzing it and finds out that the poison is from a plant called the wild thorny rose. And, of course, we find out that that rose is extinct. Now, I don't know if stuff was a little bit different in the 90s when it comes to them getting permits and all that, but I know, at least in my state, and at least the last decade, that if the place you're going to break ground on has something that's endangered, because where I work, we actually had a protected species of rodent there that we had to relocate. You have to relocate the ones. You can't just kill them willy-nilly. And of course, even now we deal with swallows that are protected, so we can't really knock their nests down. And I would assume the same thing would apply to plants, that we'd have to figure out a way to relocate them or incorporate them, and, case them off if they happen to be poisonous. And since Gotham is supposed to be in a stand-in for New York, I would think that they would be allowed to pick them up and move them, but I guess it's supposed to be a little hint on how corrupt Gotham is. They're like, yeah, nobody cares about plants. Could also be to back then, since this is supposed to be 5 years prior, so I guess you could say in the 80s, it was a bit different when it came to environmental stuff. It's just one thing watching it, I'm like, I don't know how well that would go, but like I said, 80s in a corrupt city, they probably were like, yeah, who cares about the roses? We got other type of roses here. And then finding out that it's a poisonous plant, like, yeah, fuck the plant. I don't know, since the plant is dead, it's like, Now, Pamela comes and has a visit at Harvey's side, and that gets Bruce thinking a bit more. So he has Alfred look up stuff about Pamela's past, and he finds out that she has a PhD, and it is involving plant life, botany. So it's like, plant that Harvey was poisoned with has been extinct for 5 years. His date, who kissed it before he went into that thing, is a doctor of botany. World's greatest detective connecting the dots. He follows Pamela and sneaks into her abode and sees the rose, and he goes to get it, and then he's attacked by plant life. Now, this giant plant, they were going for a big snow pea thing, but according to Bruce Timm, it wasn't intentional, but it kind of looks like a vagina with teeth. Which, looking at it, I'm like, I kind of get where he's coming from with that, but that's not what I originally thought when I saw it. I was thinking more like just like a giant plant with teeth. Now, they originally had something like Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors, but they redesigned it. And then they went with the snow pea thing, and when they got that, they're like, Now, of course, it's not intentional, but it's a good visual metaphor for the fact that poison ivy is a man killer. Now, Batman fights off the plant. He fights with Pamela a little bit, gets Pamela to inadvertently kill some of her plants, and then, of course, sets the building on fire. Now, this is after Pamela has kissed him and poisoned him with her lipstick. Now, in some versions of the comics and even later adaptations, she herself is poisonous, but here they're going a little bit more realistic with it, where it's something she has to apply to herself in order to poison others. I know realistic with some of the stuff we see and we'll see in the future, but keeping the villain a little grounded to at least make it a little bit more, I don't want to say believable, but a little bit more identifiable with certain things, but you just keep grounding it a little bit. Now Batman eventually gets out of there. Now it looks like Pamela's going to kill him, but he has the rose. And so he trades the rose for the thing. And this really shows how much Pamela loves her plants and all that. Now, a little bit with how Pamela is written in here in her dialogue, it kind of seems like they're making fun of environmentalists a little bit, but it could be the environmentalists that take things way too far and just care for plants at the expense of everything else. You can look at any group of people that advocate for anything and really make fun of the extremists with it, but here it looks like they're making fun of extreme environmentalists in the form of Pamela. And it does work a little bit, especially with how she cows down when she gets the rose and then Batman gets her out of there and then she ends up in her jail cell. Now Batman does get the cure and gives it to Harvey. And of course I just love this ending thing where it's like, Harvey, we're friends, right? Yeah. Now about Pam. She is not the right girl for you. Now, based on a later interaction we see between the two of them, it looks like Harvey was told all Pam did. And he's like, oh well. Especially since it's the next time we see him in any meaningful role in the show, he's going to be engaged as someone else. So Harvey moved on pretty well. Now, the last scene in the episode, we see Pamela in her jail cell with the rose. And her little dialogue, I love that it's another plant metaphor about coming back later. That they may think they get rid of her, but she'll come back. Guess you say kind of like a weed. You think you get rid of them, but they just keep plopping up. And that kind of sums up Poison Ivy and her interactions with Batman throughout this show and the rest of the DCAU. That's really all there is to say about it, other than there's an interesting fact that for the scene where Poison Ivy walks out of the restaurant and all the men watch her go, the animators at Sunrise could not animate her backside to look as seductive as the producers want, so Chen Yi Chang animated the sequence at Warner Brothers, and then cells were shipped overseas for Sunrise to film. I guess he did. I guess Shen Yi did it in front of everyone. They're like, okay, that's good. Now, of course, they have to do it within network restrictions, so they got the nice little balance there with it. And that's really all there is to say about this episode for another early one. It's another pretty decent one. It's one that more sticks out in my mind from the fact that I remember watching it off and on because of us having the VHS, but definitely another one to watch and not skip if you're watching just random episodes from the beginning of it. The next one I only remember because it's talked about on one of the challenges I follow to talk about this, because I have no memory of watching this one other than maybe the one time I watched it when I was watching them back a decade ago. But let's see what my thoughts on Underdwellers are, but that will be next time. Till then, everybody.